Hello and welcome to episode 1112 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Friday, November 12th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by Justin Mason. Justin, it's morning for you, so good morning to you.
It is morning. It's not as early as we usually do because
That's why it's
today's
afternoon here.
yeah.
We're in that changeover period there where it's early noon for me, late morning for you. You have the day off today.
Yeah. Happy Veterans Day for
Happy
everybody.
Veterans Day. Yourself directly.
Hmm.
Serving. Thank you for serving. Thanks to all those who have served. It's certainly not easy, not something that I think I'd be cut out for. So I do appreciate the people that do that, including yourself. So thank you.
I don't even know if you could have gotten in the military considering your height and weight. You would have needed a waiver.
That's the thing. I think I'd have gotten out on suckiness alone. We can't use you, bro. Get out of here.
Though I did have a guy who I was like my bunkmate in basic training who was like 6'6" and like 130 pounds. He did need a waiver to get in. So
I want a waiver to get out.
Yeah, you can get those. I got one of those. It's called alcoholism.
Oh yeah. Well, I probably want to avoid that one, but they don't need me anymore. Now I'm 41. They don't want my decrepit ass. So maybe back in the day when I could move a little.
Though with their recruiting issues, they may accept.
True.
Like,
they might take me and my dogs. Yeah, they might just take the dogs with us. They'll take anybody right now. We maybe could have planned this so that this was episode 1111. I love episode 1111. It's the Arizona Fall League episode. Listen to it if you haven't. But the timing would have been pretty nice if we had made this one 1111 on 1111.
We just make silly mistakes all the time.
I know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, you posted episode 1111 with 70 minutes. I mean, and you recorded a 1 minute
disclaimer. I could have just tightened
you could just cut out a minute of just random,
just dead air. A few things, I could have just trimmed it up. I should have been looking there to see if we were at that hour and 9 or 10 minute mark, and I blew it. But hopefully people enjoyed that episode. I did have to put the disclaimer on there because there was a lot of language, and I know some folks listen in the car or with kids or family around. And while we, even in our normal episodes, will occasionally have an F-bomb or say shit or something like that, we're not full blown with that the way we were on Saturday night, where we were just kind of letting it fly. So I wanted everyone to be mindful of what they were getting into. It seems most folks enjoyed it though. So I'm glad that they did, even though it wasn't heavy on baseball. We are going to talk some baseball today. We're going to pick up from where we were 2 episodes ago and kind of do some more ADP stuff, talking about how things have changed. And we're going to talk about the top 5 non-injury /closer /retirement drops, meaning injury guys, closers, and retirements are the ones that are pushed off to the side. These are the ones that are basically we're trying to get at skill. Guys that fell off because they didn't perform well. We're not as hyped on them anymore. We got 5 guys that have made some big moves. And then the top 5 drops among top 300 picks, because those first 5 that we're going to talk about, they're pretty out there now. Some of them are struggling to even go in draft champions this year. But the top 5 among the top 300 picks, those are some guys, and frankly, I could have done among the top 160 picks because the highest rated one is 155. But let's get into these first 5 here. This is a guy we've talked a bit about across the offseason for different things. We've compared a new Cubs first baseman to him. There's a lot of talk about Frank Schwindel. And was it a big miss? Was it an obvious miss? Should we have been on this? We all knew it was a small sample. We all knew it was a late career bloom. There were some positive things in that line with the Cubs last year in 2021 that made people believe. I know that you were somebody that was in on him. Here's the thing. Even with it falling apart, it wasn't a draft killer because the price was not substantial, but he completely pumpkined Justin. Frank Schwindel came all the way back to earth in a big way. And like I said, now we're seeing other comps of guys who's going to be this year's Frank Schwindel. Joey Meneses is a guy that we kind of keep putting in that same circle there. And, I try to avoid being too lazy on comps, talking about Matt Wieters with Adley Rutschman, or in this case, Meneses with Schwindel, but there's some similarities there. With Schwindel, like I said, you were bought in a bit. You knew what you were getting into, though. Were you surprised by the fall off, that it was this severe? or did you just know that this was in the range of outcomes? You took the L and moved on. How did you feel about Schwindel as the season got going? Because you probably didn't keep him terribly long, right? A month tops, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he got dropped pretty quickly by me and the Cubs, for that matter.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a little bit of both when we're talking about was this expected or was this surprising? I think it was surprising. I mean, the contact skills he had showed at the major league level and in the minor leagues for that matter were elite. And to see him drop all the way down to like league average contact ability was a bit shocking. Like it's yeah, and so like I thought at worst he would be a usable piece at the bottom of your roster.
Yeah, like a CI or a U2 or even just a bench guy that you're kind of moving in and out.
That can fill in a deeper league. And so to see him get to the point where he was not usable when he was up in the major leagues and then down in the major leagues, because one of the reasons why I felt pretty comfortable with him, even if he struggled, was the Cubs suck, man. Who the else are the Cubs going to play?
And it turned out he was even too sucky for them.
Yeah, and so I think this is a warning sign for a guy like Matt Mervis, because I think one of the pluses that we are seeing floated around is like, who else do the Cubs have? Well, the Cubs didn't have anybody last year, and they figured it out. So if Matt Mervis struggles, which I don't necessarily expect him to struggle to the same extent that Frank Schwindel did, they'll go somewhere. They'll go Alonso Rivas or whoever is the next Alonso Rivas.
Alfonso, yes.
Yeah, sorry, Alfonso.
And that's the thing too. Like we do talk about things of like, okay, this team is not very good. They're going to give so-and-so a try, but that try does have a limit. And I think we, as a community, see with Schwindel that we need to readjust what that limit is. I think we had a lower bar for what a team would take if they're a bad team. Cubs said, no, we got a 30-year-old guy here. We'll put anybody in whose age starts with a 2 just so that we're trying out some guys with the way Schwindel is performing. The power completely dropped. Now, I got to imagine that as the season developed, you saw him as one of the guys like your Jamer Candelarios and your Scopes and all that, and even probably to a lower extent, he doesn't have as much power as those guys. Was Schwindel a victim of the offensive environment eating up his power just as much as the fact that he regressed and wasn't as powerful as last year, or is it like where do you put that meter between his power fell off because he doesn't have it and the league environment? Is it all league environment? Is it all his power wasn't that good, or is it probably somewhere in the middle?
It's probably somewhere in the middle. I think he definitely struggled because of the change in balls and changing kind of league environment. But I also think, you look at what he did in terms of his batted ball profile, and his ground ball rate went up to the roof. He also wasn't making as much contact in the zone. Like, I mean, he was a guy who was a 91, 92% zone contact guy previously. And then all of a sudden he's league average. He's 83, 84%. And then you add in that his ground ball rate went up like 15% to like 47% overall. It's like, okay, now he's not making as much contact. And when he does make contact, it's on the ground. Like, that's just going to crush your power. Now you add in the fact that the balls aren't flying nearly as far. Okay, well, we have a lot of problems, and that kind of all lumps together into the Frank Schwindel experience in 2022, which was not favorable for him or me.
No, it really wasn't. And I didn't mention his drop off yet. He lost 464 picks down to 701, and he went in all of the draft champions drafts last year. And like I said, he might not even get picked in some of them this year. Let's talk about Jonathan Villar. Now, we've known him as a guy who has bounced around, right? Like his highs have been very high. Led baseball with 62 steals back in 2016, hit 19 homers and a 285 average that year. Absolutely fantastic. Fell on hard times the very next year, rebounded in 18, surged again in 19, back down to earth again in 20. Even though it was the shortened season, he hit 232 with 2 homers, 16 steals. The 16 steals helped, but he was bad again. Rebounded yet again in 21 for VR, 18 homers, 14 steals, which was a bit of a low number, but you're getting a double-double from a bench guy. And then this year, gone again. Spent time with those aforementioned Cubs as well as the Angels. 59 games with a 59 OPS plus. There's some numerical symmetry for you with VR. 3 homers, 7 steals. He's going to be 32 next year. He has lost 459 picks down to pick 709 or 708, excuse me. People have moved on from VR. I don't blame them. Do you think there's a rebound here? Like if he signs with somebody, would you then be taking VR, or have you moved on from the VR train?
I think if you're playing in well, we don't know where he's going to be. So if you're playing in a mono league and you know he's going to sign in that league, then I think he's worth a roster spot. I think in 50-round draft and holds, if he signs a contract, he's worth a roster spot because
he has moved up, by the way, to 688. He's moved up 20 picks since I wrote that up about a week ago, which, honestly, one pick could have done that, to be
yeah.
I almost said to be honest after I said honestly. But yeah, like he has a min of 563. That could have recently happened, and that alone could pull you up that many spots. So I'm not reading too much into that, but I just wanted to get the factual info out there that VR is up to 688, which is super, super late in these 50-round draft and holds. I think I agree with you though that I could see myself getting him in a round 40 range, 40 to 50 range if he signs somewhere. If he signs somewhere where it looks like there's a clearer path to playing time, he might go in the late 30s rounds. If you're picking him in anything before that, though, I think you're kind of wasting a pick.
Yeah. I mean, if he were to sign, let's say Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh has been doing this thing where they sign these kind of aged veterans to come in for part-time roles like Michael Chavis, Michael Chavis had some usable months
he sure
in
did.
fantasy. So, and when you're talking about a guy like VR who's got speed, like that's always has value in fantasy. And I know like some people are like, well, it's going to have less value this year. I don't know that it will. Like, I don't think we know at all. I think Derek Carty had a really good panel in which he talked about like, will this change things? It may, but it might not. So
we don't know. And if you make too many sweeping guesses on what it's going to do, you could wind up making some bad moves. So I wouldn't over-index one way or the other on that.
So he's multi-positional eligible. That's always helpful, especially in these draft and hold formats, in really, really deep formats. So I don't know, like, am I targeting him? No, but like end of the draft, like, hey, I might need a little extra speed. I'm looking for a guy who can cover second base and third base, so he can cover my CI and MI. VR, if he's got a spot, I think he's worth a roster spot. So I think if you're drafting early before he signs, because he probably won't be one of those guys who signs before February. That's one of your few stash spots in a draft and all. Like you cannot.
I can get behind that.
I can't load up with a bunch of injury guys, a bunch of prospects, and Jonathan VR. You got to kind of pick and choose.
No, but yeah, you can go for a Jonathan VR. That power and speed can certainly be pretty useful. We'll see what happens if and when he signs. Robbie Grossman, minus 426 picks down to pick 607. He had that 2020 year with the Tigers. I struggled to get fully behind it. I cannot sit here and pretend I knew he was going to fall off to that degree. That would be a stone cold lie. But I didn't have a ton of confidence that the steals were going to repeat, which made him pretty bland for an outfielder. If you're giving him like 17 homers, 8 steals, and a 240 average, whatever. He ends up with 7 homers, 6 steals, 209 average. It ends up being a pretty rough year. He rebounded a little with Atlanta, quote unquote, but not much. Once he went over there, Robbie Grossman's now 33. Has just kind of the one spike here from a fantasy relevant standpoint. He's had other positive years as a bat, but that was the big fantasy relevant season. Is there any hope here for Grossman? And is he somebody you would take? And I guess if the answer is yes, compare him in VR at that point with Grossman.
I mean, so in my first draft of the year, he was just sitting on the board and just sitting and sitting and sitting, and I just never was able to pull the trigger, even though I needed outfielders because, like we talked about at length, outfield sucks this year. So like Robbie Grossman, he's a season removed from a 2020 year. Like, oh, do I just pull the trigger and hope he signs somewhere? I don't know that. Like, I think he probably will sign somewhere, but like. as
be like
what?
a minor league deal. Like,
Yeah, and that's my big fear is he's like a minor league deal or he's on a platoon. Like the Braves aren't bringing it back. They didn't. I think they just traded for somebody crappy. So like, why would they bring him in?
Who?
The Braves just signed somebody crappy or traded for somebody crappy.
Oh yeah. Well, no, that was a pitcher trade. Oh yeah. No, they did. Sam Hilliard.
Yeah.
So
So
they're not
like,
going to bring in Grossman. He's a younger, better version of Like they're not even that comparable. But that outfield spot, like that bench outfielder, was just taken by Hilliard. So Grossman's not coming back to Atlanta.
yeah.
I agree with you there.
I don't know. Like I
There's
would
not
not be
much to go off of.
surprised. Yeah, I would not be surprised if he didn't find at least a full-time job, much less any job. I mean, I think he'll probably find something, but like if he signed in the KBO, like, would you be surprised? I wouldn't.
I really wouldn't with Grossman. So I'm not really looking to spend a pick there. I don't even know if I'm looking to spend a pick here, even though I love this guy and I don't want to quit Nelson Cruz, but it's bad. Minus 411 picks to pick 589 at this point. We thought, okay, the way people were justifying it was A, I mean, he obviously has a sparkling track record. B, the fall off at the end of 21 was in Tampa Bay. We know Tampa Bay can be a difficult park for certain guys. Most famously, of course, Adames struggling there. He talked about how bad it was. Maybe Cruz fell into some of that because he put up just a 101 OPS plus there after putting up a 148 with Miami earlier in the year. So that was kind of the hope that people had pinned on Nelson Cruz. Well, the 41-year-old looked every bit of 41 and then some. 234, 313, 337 slash. The 337 slug is just devastating. 10 homers. The funny thing is he dropped a little 4 steals for you. So that's fun. He went 4 for 4.
Speed demon.
Yeah, that little speed demon Nelson Cruz. Assuming he keeps playing, which I believe he said that he wants to, and so let's assume somebody signs him, at least with the NLDH. There are 30 potential jobs for him. Nelson Cruz has been a show favorite for years. Are you still drafting him?
Of course I am. The price is like primed. We got to see that he signs first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like,
so you're not drafting him sight unseen yet?
No, I need to know. I mean, how many teams want a 42-year-old Nelson Cruz? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's just going to be a very, very small market. Like this will be $1, pick in March if he signs on a team in a place where he's actually going to get playing time. At this point in his career, he can't play the outfield at all. He could end up on a team like Pittsburgh. Like this seems like the perfect location or in a perfect, place for a guy like Nelson Cruz. But I mean, is he washed? Probably. I mean, the contact skills aren't as great as they were. His swing clearly looks slower last year than it had in previous seasons. The launch angle was down to 7 degrees, which makes it really hard to barrel a ball if you can't get it high enough to count as a barrel. So there wasn't a whole lot that's good. At this point, it's name value.
Yeah, you're betting track record blindly here. Like I can't dig into the profile and give you anything on Nelson Cruz that's gonna wet your whistle. Like if you like him, you like him. Otherwise, shrug and move on, right? Because there's nothing here that's gonna make me that excited.
And I mean, I think there's a reasonable chance that he doesn't get the kind of offer that is worth it to him to continue playing. Like,
agreed.
I mean, a guy who is just making, I think $12 million a year, is he going to sign a $2 million offer so he can go play in Pittsburgh? I don't think he's going to. Like, I mean,
I don't know. Yeah, I would think, he did the Washington thing this year. I wonder if maybe he's angling towards something. I want to be on a better team. I would take lower money, whatever. We don't know. Speculation there with Nelson Cruz. I will say this though, even at the very, very, very low price right now, not on my roster until he has a team, because there's such a high chance that it could be a full zero for you.
Yeah, I don't know that you can, especially if you're playing draft and holds, which is what the majority of drafts going on right now are.
Yep.
I just don't know that you want to take the risk on a 41-year-old when you can take the risk on a 20-year-old that, hey, there's an outside chance he gets the majors and is amazing. I just think that the chance that you take the 0, or even if you don't take the 0 and he's still a 0, is too high to be taking the risk until you know he's at least got a team to play on.
Yep, completely agree there with Nelson Cruz. Hope that he can find a little dead cat bounce, as they call it, but I'm not particularly optimistic. I was optimistic about this guy last year, and I'll take a fat L on my Abraham Toro love because that didn't go anywhere. I was excited that, hey, maybe he can find pretty close to a full-time role and, a little pop, a little batting average maybe. Now, he hadn't shown batting average in the majors, but there was projection of like, oh, he can actually hit. So with an extended time period of playing time without, uninterrupted, so to speak, has good enough Ks to maybe be 250 type hitter with 20 homer type power. Yeah, no, 352 plate appearances, 185, 239, 324. Of course, that first number is his batting average, so very much not 250. 10 homers and 2 steals for Toro. He was out of a job, not in a full-time role. Still just 26 though. So unlike so many of these other guys on this list, he's not old. And unlike the others, he has a team as well. So he's still in Seattle. He's still not penciled in to start, right? He's still a utility fielder. But what does Abraham Toro do for you this year after the tough down year? Because I want to say you were on the train with me last year too. We liked him as a deep league type of pick, utility type guy. It didn't work out. You jumping back in, or you passing on Toro?
I think a lot of it depends on what the Mariners do this offseason. If they add to that infield, then I think he's really has no place to play.
I mean, as is, we have him on the bench with Dylan Moore penciling at second base. Let's say they go big. They get somebody who's unquestionably the second baseman. I can't think of the second base. It's not going to be Turner, I don't think, but just say Turner. Something so obvious that they're going to put in there. So now Moore is even on the bench along with Toro. What are you doing there? Is Toro off the board at 650 for you then? Because he's so cheap right now that even without PT, I don't think you have to worry about it. Is he somebody you would still take as under the idea of like, if Abraham Toro finds a role, I can still click here? Or if he gets buried, you're out? Well, where do you come out on Toro, assuming they put somebody at second that's like locked in there?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm probably out if they lock someone in. And I don't even know if I'm in if they lock someone. I still like the underlying skills. He knows how to take a walk. He makes good contact in the zone. I just think that this is a team that's looking to improve. And like one of the ways they can improve is by, bringing in a shortstop or bringing in a second baseman, moving Crawford over to.
Yeah, I was going to say Swanson is another name that I actually have a little bit more faith in than I was saying Turner just because I couldn't think of any other middle infielder. Let's say it is Swanson, though. They go big. They get Crawford on board with moving to second. So, again, that's locked and loaded because they do love J.P. Crawford there. I still think Toro's all right at that price, though, right? Because you said you still like some of the skills. I agree. 19% K rate is not problematic. 9% swinging strike says that's a fine K rate. He doesn't walk a ton, but if you don't strike out a bunch, I'm not as worried about it. And I should mention he had a 198 BABIP this year. I was roasting his batting average. Well, that came with a 198 BABIP for Toro. There's some bad luck in there too, no matter how you slice it. Yes, he contributed to it with his punchless hitting, but he also got some pretty rotten luck. So I think I'm still taking Toro in draft and hold situations, especially because when you get that late, finding hitters that you can even map out a potential path to full-time role is difficult. So if you're going to give me a 26-year-old in the mid 40s rounds, I think I'm in. So I'm actually pretty, like, as far as DCs go, I'm kind of targeting Toro as one of those late hitters because hitting gets so dry late. I'm going to take a guy who's actually on a major league roster.
Yeah, I mean, he's going around the same spot as Jonathan Villar, and at least Toro has a job.
Exactly.
It may not be in the majors all season, but there is some sort of potential path to playing time. You can play a lot of different positions, first, second, and third. I can see a world in which Toro kind of becomes an everyday player again. So I don't really see that for Jonathan Villar. So I'll take Toro. He's still second and third base eligible. You love those guys who can play the corner and the middle. I think I'm on board with that. And he's definitely not like a major target for me necessarily. which is surprising because he was my like super late sleeper years ago. The year he broke out, year he got picked up and play and became playable. I don't know if it's a breakout, but yeah, I think I'm open to it, especially if I need some middle.
Like I said, it gets dry. It gets
Mhm.
really dry for hitters that aren't on a minor league roster or don't have super wards or no team like Villar. So considering how late Toro's going, 667 ADP right now, for somebody who's on a major league roster, at least right now, I'm down. So I'm gonna take Toro there. All right, let's get into our top 5 drops among top 300 picks. But first, I do want to ask you about something I meant to ask you at the top of the show. Let's go ahead and squeeze it in right here. Justin Verlander opting out. I know you might flip it on me.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, you might flip it on me and say, well, you're the Justin Verlander guy. What do you think? But I want to get your thoughts here. Is he just opting out to get a fatter deal because he knows he can probably get 30 from them instead of the 25? Is he trying to do another 2 where it's guaranteed this year and then another option like he had here so he can kind of just keep playing that year to year? Is he going to a new team? Or do you think Justin Verlander's retiring? What do you think of the opt-out? Because I was a little bit stunned. I feel like he's not going to restart with a new team. So I'm kind of looking at either get more money or pack it up, man. Third size, second World Series, beautiful family, TV job waiting for him if he wants it, or a coaching, anything he wants, waiting for him for whatever second act Justin Verlander wants to do. I mean, that's what I said. Beautiful family, got a wonderful wife, kids. What's the play here? I was surprised. I mean, I just don't see him playing another. I just don't see him starting up with another team, though.
I'd say that before retirement. Like, why even opt out if you're going to retire? You just retire. Like, you don't need to opt out. Like, I don't think the retirement's the goal. I think more money is the goal. I think he can leverage the rest of the market. I think people are going to see what he did. Teams are going to see what he did and know that they can give him a very short-term contract. I still think he ends up back in Houston. That seems like the most logical spot. I think you're right. I don't know that he wants to necessarily start it up over again with another organization, especially when you have a young family and stuff. So he's probably just looking for maybe a 2 or 3 year deal with a higher AAV, especially with some of the other pitchers on the market. Like if DeGrom's going to get this massive deal, and other pitchers are going to get these massive deals, you can spend the same kind of money on a 2-year deal with Justin Verlander with an option for that 3rd year. Or you can, shell out 5-6 years on these other pitchers.
I'd be surprised if he got 2 fully committed. I mean, he is a unicorn, looked at brilliant this year. I think it's going to be like 260 with the second being another option. So he gets 5 extra mil and he stays in charge of that next year. I think this is a play for more money out of Houston. The only thing that could maybe change my mind there is we just saw that James Click is leaving and it is under duress. Actually, I don't know if I'm using that phrase probably. It is an acrimonious split here. They offered him 1 year. He said,
which is insane. Insane. How do you?
A dude's like 20 years old and, just won the world. He's not that young, but he's young. So a 44-year-old doesn't usually get like a 1-year commitment. That, you're looking at like a 5 after winning the World Series, 5-year deal for, gobs of money or whatever. So they offer him a 1 while he was negotiating to try to get it longer. Apparently he was kind of airing things out at the GM meetings about how ridiculous this was. And so they fired him. Like this is, I saw at least some tweets right now. They could have been from Elon bots, who knows, but suggest like wanting it clear that Houston wants this to be seen as a firing. Whereas, he's doing the old, you can't fire me, I quit. And they're doing the, you're fired, that whole sort of thing right now. But there's a little bit of turmoil for a team that was just a juggernaut and won the World Series. Any bit of the James Click thing make you think that maybe there's some turmoil there that might have Verlander leaving that way? Because that was the only thing that made me think that before that, I didn't think he was leaving at all. Now I was like, well, maybe there's a little tinge.
You never really know how these things, and this is coming from a Washington Commanders fan who's going through an organization or dealing with an organization who's in like real turmoil right now.
Seemingly.
Yeah. Too. Oh, it just gets worse and worse every day in Washington. But you never know like how this kind of stuff like affects players, especially the veteran guys who do have relationships with these front office guys, right? Like they're not just choosing an organization always based on money. A lot of them are, but a guy like Verlander, he's got plenty of money. He doesn't care. He wants to play for an organization where he feels valued and he has a chance to win. And so, I mean, this could play into that. I still think he ends up back in Houston. It just makes the most amount of sense.
Yeah, unless things are really falling apart, I do too. But I was definitely surprised by finding out that the Click situation was a negative there. It wasn't more like, oh, I'm going to leave and try to go rebuild a new team. It was like butting heads, and he gave the double bird, and they gave him the double bird, and it's acrimonious.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I just want to get your thoughts there on JV. I agree. I'm putting my money on back to Houston. We'll see if anything else happens. Let's get in these top 5 drops among top 300 picks. Let's start with Whit Merrifield. He lost 155 picks to 187. That's a bit of a fall.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about his season is that if you really kind of get into the game logs there, he was pretty much himself after that first like 40 games or so. The easiest kind, and I know it's the old arbitrary endpoints, but it looks like this is when things started to turn for him. That 4-hit game on May 11th was the second of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 game hit streak. I use the 4-hit game because that's 4 for 4 is a really nice game there. You go from that point forward, he hit 280, 330, 432 with 11 homers and 13 steals. That's a 16 and 19 full season pace. I know he wasn't good in Toronto from a playing time standpoint, but he did have a 769 OPS, which is a 118 OPS plus. He was above average with them. He didn't run with Toronto, though. That's probably the biggest issue, is that Toronto doesn't run, and is he going to be a full-time player? How do you assess Whit Merrifield coming off a rough season, now on a team where he's not guaranteed to be an every single day player, and they don't run? Is the 34-year-old Merrifield kind of cooked as a fantasy asset? Do you agree with this price drop here?
I definitely agree with the price drop. He's the guy I took as my 4th outfielder at FPAS, just because outfield gets so
outfield 4,
bad.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, right. Multi-positional eligible still. He's still on he's on a really good offense in Toronto. I'm really worried about the usage. I'm really worried about the lack of stolen bases, because if he only attempted 3 stolen bases after going to Toronto, and he was 1 for 3. Like,
yeah. They don't run, man.
Mm-hmm.
They got boppers all up and down the lineup. Why do they got to run? I mean, Bo didn't even run much this year. We talked about that over the weekend, and he was 13 for 21. Espinal was 6 for 12. That's awful. Springer was 14 for 16. He was the only efficient, higher volume runner. So it's just not part of Merrifield's game with Toronto, and that obviously cuts out his biggest leg fantasy wise. So as no OF4, I don't mind it like you did, but what is your expectation here? Like 270, 10 and 10?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And there's always the chance that he turns back into Whit Merrifield. But we're also not talking about a guy whose skills are what they were. They've been slowly declining over the last few years, and it's why so many people over the last few years have been like, oh, Whit Merrifield's a bust candidate. He's a bust candidate. And I understand there are people taking victory laps, but again, I don't think it's fair to say it 3 years in a row and you finally get it right. It's the whole Nelson Cruz thing. People were like, I told you Nelson Cruz was going to fall off. I was like, well, the last 8 seasons before that, you were all like, Nelson Cruz is going to fall off, and he shoved it in your face. So,
exactly. And our best example on that is always the Chris Sale injury people. You didn't get it right. He had 10 successful years. Oh, and then you predict. So, you just predict the pitcher gets broken down. So you could have said that about Verlander, and then 15 years into his career, he gets TJ, and you go, I knew it. Exactly. Yeah. There's a limitation on some of those. And I agree with the Merrifield ones. He did finally fall down this year, but if you were calling it the previous couple years, you don't get to take credit. Now, if you called it coming into 22, take your victory lap. He did fall off. I do see a rebound, though. And it really was those first 40 or so games that really sunk him. And unless we think that he's going to have another streak like that. Actually, it was only 26 games. I oversold it. It was 26 games with a 158 BABIP, Justin. He hit 139 in that time period. He was just wildly unlucky for those games. And then he got back to being Whit Merrifield, except for the speed component, which is more of a Toronto thing than it is him. So with the discount that Merrifield's getting, I'm back on board. You got him as an OF4. He's going to have multi-position eligibility. I'm chill with that. What do you got anything else on Merrifield?
I'm gonna say this. I got him as an OF4 in that draft, but had I drafted that team a little bit smarter, I wouldn't have drafted him.
Okay.
I waited too long to get my outfield.
Oh, you would have wanted a better outfielder for it.
I don't feel super comfortable. Like my OF4 and 5 in that league are Whit Merrifield and Joe Adell. Like I do not feel comfortable with the bottom tier of my outfield.
And there's not much out there.
Like, it's just I don't want to be in a position where I feel like I need to draft Whit Merrifield.
Yeah, I got Grisham as my OF4 and Olivares as my OF5.
So we're going to talk about Grisham here in a minute.
Yes, we are. And Alvarez, Ward, Suzuki are my top 3. So I love the top 3. And I think the 4 or 5 are fine. I'm a Grisham guy. We're going to get to him in a moment, like you said. But let's talk Jared Walsh first. Obviously has a huge collapse in his ADP, 149 picks down to 273 for Jared Walsh. Late bloomer breakout that had some viability to it. And panned out in his, he had the 20 blip, and I say blip because 20 was short, even if you played all year, but he only played half of it. We bought in. Those of you that bought in, you got paid out. 29 homers, 98 ribbies, 277 average. He was awesome in 2021. This year, though, everything fell apart. Now, I don't know that I think like, oh, the power got to him because he was one of those middling power guys. He struck me as somebody who could fight through the power in the league dropping, but that was not the case. He only hit 14 homers with a 215, 269, 374 slash, which is truly horrendous for Jared Walsh. As a first base type, who's now going to be, 31 next year, I believe? Or no, just, excuse me, he's going into his age 29. So it's not as old as I thought, but he is in his upper 20s. How nervous are you by this power outage from Jared Walsh, and how does it affect you drafting him for 2023?
I'm super nervous because he got thoracic outlet surgery.
Now we don't have a whole lot of record on that for hitters, but we
know
it's not good for pitchers.
Like I have not been able to find a single one.
I thought Didi got it. Maybe not.
I thought
maybe he just got straight Tommy John.
I think he was Tommy John. Like we have no idea like how this affects hitters. I mean, we barely understand it for pitchers.
I agree. I agree.
Like there hasn't been a ton for pitchers, so like we have no idea what it's gonna do for hitters. I feel like 273 isn't a far enough drop, to be honest. Especially because we're like, let's say he is back to being the guy he was prior to the injury. Because I chalk a lot of 2022 up to that, right? Like,
yeah,
he had been dealing with it for a while, and that he even had been dealing with it prior to the 2022 season. So like, I kind of say, screw it. Like, let's not worry about that. He still has massive platoon issues.
That's true.
Like, he is not good against lefties. And like, I think that's going to be a major issue for him if he ends up becoming a platoon bat. This is also an Angels team. I have no idea what their direction is. Could they bring in a guy to platoon with him, or just even take his spot at some point? Like, they probably could.
Knowing them, they'll sign Abreu.
Yeah, like that. I think Abreu ends up with another team, but like there's reports that he could end up in the other Chicago team, which would be really scary for
a
guy that everybody's been on board with. It apparently seems like the Matt Mervis train is going crazy. Remember, like right before he left for FPAS, we had the discussion on Matt Mervis, and we made a bet that I said he'd be a top 200 ADP guy. And by March, and you were like, nah, and
he's
now,
already gonna be
like, he's gonna be like next week, like, so
I firmly disagree with it. By the way, I was wrong that was gonna happen, because I was just saying like, no, that shouldn't happen, but it is, and I'm definitely wrong because he almost already went there at FPAS.
Yeah, so I think Walsh is If he's cheap enough in a draft, I think he's worth a gamble. But he needs to be really cheap, and I feel like still inside the top 300 is a little bit more expensive when we don't know at all. Like, we have no idea what he could or couldn't be able to do.
dropped another 10 spots doing the update right now to 283. So that's getting you closer to that 300 mark. I will say in the last in my draft that I did that is completed, because ours isn't completed, so it's not in the system. He went 372, which was the max. Our league set a max on Jared Walsh.
Like, that seems great. I love that kind of price, because you're talking about a guy who could potentially hit 30 home runs.
Yeah.
If he's healthy. And at 372, you're going, I don't really need him to do what he does. Now it's all just cake. Anything outside of like the top 350, and I'm pretty much in. Anything inside the top 300, and then I need to see some health. And if we see health, in spring training, he's gonna bump back up to like 250.
Yeah, and then like it's a coin flip at that point, because he's going in this group, and this was a group that made you a little regretful of taking Mervis. You got one of these guys, Tristan Casas, but then Spencer Torkelson, Luke Voigt, those three specifically. Trey Mancini, we'll see where he lands, but I like all four of those guys. They're all in the Walsh area too. So if Walsh's price is the same as theirs, I think I rank him 5th amongst that group. Mervis himself has a 315 ADP right now, but like you said, you took him 227. Somebody else took him 206. So he is moving up. There's another guy like Miguel Vargas. He's at 324.
Love Miguel Vargas.
I got to see where his power is, though, because he got a Yandy Diaz comp in the prospect write-up this year. And looking at his profile, that fits. And if he doesn't escape that Yandy Diaz sphere where he doesn't hit for enough power, he can't get the ball up enough, then he's not quite as good of a first base type. But Walsh, I agree with you. If he's trending in the 290s or later, you said 300s or later. If I'm in that late 200s, early 300s, I can get behind it. Anything higher than that, though, there's probably going to be somebody else I want later. Let's move on to the mound. First guy we talked about as a pitcher here, Jose Berrios. Nobody's going to be surprised to learn that he's falling down. 143 picks down to 217 this year for Berrios. Let me see if that's the most updated. 220. So he continues to evaporate even a bit more. Obviously had the disastrous season. The funny thing is, our good friend Nick Pollock calls him the great undulator. He's up and down, up and down. And that's always been Berrios. Like, go through and game log him from really any of his years, and you're going to see the ups and downs. And you might think like, oh, well, this is the year that broke and it was just down because he had a 5.23 ERA. And you'd actually be wrong. He undulated even more. Nick said he was the greatest of undulators this year. And he is right, because, just using game score as a loose shorthand, it's not perfect, but it gets the job done here. Any game score over 55 is a pretty good game. You can't really fake that. He had 14 at 57 or better. Another couple right at 54. But he also had, this is Berrios, had 10 that were 40 and below. And you cannot have a 40 game score and salvage that game. Like, that is kind of the cutoff point where that is a shit outing, no matter how you slice it. In fact, all 10 of those are 36 and below. I just used 40 as the cutoff. So 10 devastating starts could not be countered by 14 good to great ones for Berrios. But at least he still showed those upsides. Is that enough for you to get back on board with Berrios, who allowed the most hits and earned runs in the American League this year? Jose Berrios is going to be age 29 next year. How are you feeling about the right-handed starter?
Man, he needs to stop throwing that four-seamer.
Does he have a two-seamer or cutter or
he's got a sinker? Yeah,
so he does have something else he could turn to.
And that wasn't necessarily great or anything, but he had a 618 slug against the four-seamer.
It was part of the home run
murder
surge too, because he jumped up to 1.5 homer 9 for Berrios as well. A minus 18.9 pitch value for the fastball. Pitch values are not predictive. They just tell you what happened. It got crushed. You don't need to know pitch values that well to know that minus 18.9, and just about any metric that you're talking about, unless you're in golf, a minus 18.9 on something is not good, right? Like, that's just kind of inherent that a negative in this case is very bad.
15 homers given up on that four-seamer.
That's brutal.
It's just,
to put that in context, he gave up 22 homers all of last year, 2021. So 15 just on the fastball this year. Yeesh. So he's in Toronto. It is a tougher place.
Yeah.
But We get the new schedule, which maybe softens a little bit of that change, because remember, he went from the AL Central, the best division over the last several years to pitch in, to the worst, the AL East. But now with the balanced schedule, he won't have as many trips to New York, Boston. I know Baltimore's not as scary anymore with their park, but they're still a solid team. He pitches on Toronto, so that helps. But is that enough? And along with Berrios' track record, the new schedule and track record, is that enough to get you on board here at a pick 280 type or pick 220 type price? Is that cheap enough for you on Berrios?
I mean, I think it's in the general right area. There's just guys there I like much more. I mean,
give me a couple of your names, because I want to play either or with you, and I don't want to just give the names that you're definitely going to pick.
I'm definitely going to take John Gray over him.
Yeah, you love Gray. I like Gray too. I don't mean to say that like you love him and I don't.
Yeah.
I'm with you though. I like Gray.
I'm definitely, if I'm going to bet on a bounce back, I think I'll bet on Trevor Rogers.
Yeah, me too. What about the other Gray, since he's right there? Sonny.
That's tough. I just worry about the durability on Sonny Gray.
I don't think that's unfair.
I think at least with Berrios, he's going to be on the mound. Like, you're going to get 200 innings. It may not
be. We reasonably expect it. You never know. Anybody's knowledge. Sure. But I get what you're saying. I just want to clarify that we can't guarantee it, but he does not inherently, he being Berrios, carry injury risk at the same degree as somebody like Sonny Gray. By the way, I ranked them 58, 59. So to stay honest, I have to say I'm higher on Gray, but by the smallest margin.
Yeah. I think Patrick Sandoval is an interesting discussion.
I was going to bring him up. We do both Angels here, both lefty Angels. Patrick Sandoval, Reed Detmers are both right there. Rank Sandy, Detmers, Berrios. Give me all three ranked.
Oh, okay.
You can look at your rankings too, so that you don't go.
I don't have them up right now, but I'll just off the top of my head, I think I'm gonna go Sandoval, Berrios, Detmers.
Oh wow, we are completely. We both have. No, I went Detmers, Sandoval, Berrios.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a close trio.
Yeah, I think you can make the argument either way. I think the innings are probably a little bit safer with the Berrios. The team context is way better with Berrios. And that's tough. I honestly, I don't know how much I want any of them. Like I've
drafted the Angels lefties.
Sandoval's whip is a problem.
It is. Who he looks a lot like? Lefty Luis Castillo. And Castillo obviously took that turn, hit that jump this year. It helped getting out of that park. It's not necessarily Angels Park that's hurting Sandoval, by the way, but I'm just saying for Castillo going to Seattle and getting better too, right? He didn't just go, the park didn't magically make him better. He was better. And thus his whip was a lot less of a problem this year. It was less of a problem in Cincinnati, but coming into this year, Castillo was one of those guys who was consistently held back by his whip. And I think he skated in the fantasy world. I feel like we didn't give it enough credence that it was a problem. He had a 136 in 2021, but he dropped it down to 108 this year. But Sandoval's had that persistent issue because his walk rate is high and he's an extreme ground ball guy, and they don't always turn his ground balls into outs because the Angels suck. So he had a 134 whip this year. It was 121 last year, but 134 the year before that as well, only 36 innings. So it is nerve-wracking with Sandoval's whip. If they increase the defense, like what if they get like a Dansby Swanson? Is that something that you would? I
don't think there's any reasonable chance they do. Like I think they're going to roll with what they've got. At least gross. I agree, but can they afford another big contract right now? Like, I mean, obviously they
shouldn't be a pitcher.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, obviously, I don't know that it should be in the bullpen. The problem is, where do you put
don't spend money there though? That's where you can go off cheap, I think.
Yeah, there's not much on the bullpen market right now, especially after we got Robert Suarez and Edwin Diaz already re-signed.
I like them inking Suarez, by the way.
I do too. It was a great deal for both of them, I think.
So yeah,
Detmers is actually interesting. Maybe I'm a little bit too low on Detmers.
Yeah, his in-season transition was something to behold. Like he really clicked after going down, tightening up the slide. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was like one piece of information, moving your finger a little bit, whatever it was. I don't know if it was a big, small, or what difference. But he went down very briefly. I want to say 2 starts max, maybe only 1. for AAA for Detmers. Comes back up, and he was a different guy, Justin. The slider was working. He was missing bats, which what he wasn't doing earlier. And even though he was having some success, remember he had the no-hitter, and everyone called it, by the way. Like, nobody was fooled by Detmers, generally speaking. Everyone was kind of like, okay, he's a good prospect, he's a good pitcher, but we're not buying into him as an ace yet, and this no-hitter is not selling anybody. So when he went down, he was getting cut left, right, and center, myself included. Comes back up, 3.04 ERA, 78 strikeouts in 71 innings. I'm pretty moved by that because the arsenal was different and better. Like, yes, it's a small sample and it is an in-season change, but this is also something that I was expecting from him. I remember saying on the pod that he could be a summer breakout. Now, I didn't hang on for that summer breakout, but I didn't feel like I could because I didn't know if it was going to come or not. But I like Detmers quite a bit, and that's why he's my number one of this little Berrios, Sandoval, Detmers trio that we're talking about.
Yeah, when we're talking about Angels pitchers, I'm always going to devalue them a little bit anyways, just because of the 6-man rotation.
That's a good point.
I mean, it limits, you're never going to get 2 starts. And I think it just limits, the guy, and they've shown like they will throw Joe Schmo in that rotation to keep it a 6-man because they're trying to protect Ohtani.
Have they hard confirmed that that's on the books for next year?
They haven't, but I just assume as long as they've got Ohtani that
we should operate as though it is until we get word to the contrary. But I was just wondering, if they had committed to that yet.
I don't know that they have necessarily verbally committed to it, but I think as long as they've got Ohtani on that team, and they may not have Ohtani, like there is talk that they could trade him, and so maybe that changes at some point this season, especially if they fall out of it early. But I think for now you have to operate with the idea that they're going to run a 6-man rotation for the entire season, or at least for the vast majority of it. And so you just have to drop the starts for guys like Sandoval and Detmers and really plan into, if you're in a league that locks, pitching lineups weekly, which, a lot of people play, you're just never going to get that second start, which hurts, I think, a little bit. So, I think I'm a little bit too low on Detmers. I'm probably gonna need to raise my ranks. I'll have my ranks completely updated by Monday night for those people on the Patreon. So, going back to Berrios, I don't see myself getting him very often unless he just really slides in a draft. When your fastball, the pitch you throw the second most amount is that awful. I really need to see something different. If we hear him, hey, I'm going to add a cutter. I'm going to, I'm working on this, maybe that changes my mind a little bit because I think the price is ripe for buying.
Yeah.
But there's still so many guys in that area, around Berrios, the John Grays, the Bailey Overs,
I was gonna bring up Ober and Ashby as well.
Aaron Ashby's another guy like where
your boy Heaney is not is even lower, right? You could wait 2 rounds, and obviously we know Heaney's health concerns for sure, but his skills when he pitches are great. Do you take Berrios or do you wait 2 rounds and take Heaney?
I think it depends on the construction of your pitching staff already. If you've got a bunch of horses, I think you can kind of wait and go for Heaney. If you have guys who have risk to them, innings risks, injury risks, things like that, then I think you need to draft a guy like Berrios over Heaney because Berrios is going to give you length. And
I agree. I think that's a good call.
And we also don't know where Heaney's going to pitch. Like,
Correct.
There's talk that Boston's interested in him. Do we want him in Fenway? I don't know. If the Dodgers couldn't fix Andrew Heaney, can anybody?
I mean, they got the skills out of it.
Yeah.
They just couldn't fix the health.
I wish they had given him the qualifying offer so he could just stay.
Right. There is no magic elixir for fixing health, unfortunately. By the way, Tyler Anderson should absolutely take that cue.
Yeah, Tyler Anderson should take it.
Perez
should take it. Jock Peterson should take it
all day.
Yeah,
probably Eovaldi. I said I could see Eovaldi maybe not taking it to get a multi, but then someone pointed out that the pick could tank his market to where he doesn't get any multi offers, in which case I would then take it. But those are the 4 that I can really see taking it. Martin Perez, Tyler Anderson, Jock Peterson, and Nathan Eovaldi.
Yeah, all of them should definitely take it.
I think those are the 4 there. So if you're doing an over-under,
19 million in the bank. Like,
yeah.
What is Jock Peterson going to get on the open market? Like 220
not
anyways?
that.
Like,
and listen, I
got
know he had
119.
I know he had a great season, and there's talk of how the shift is going to help guys like that. I'm still surprised that y'all offered it to him.
I'm shocked too. But I was shocked they offered it to Brandon Belt, and that turned out to be an awful decision. So,
all right, let's talk Yasmani Grandal. One of the bigger flops of the year because it was just a stone cold flop, and it was at a tough position and where he kind of a doubly hurt. This is a little hard to quantify, right? Because it's on a case by case basis. Catcher was so robust this year that some people might have acted quickly, right? If you got the Phil Dussault type of mind, everyone talks about how he cut DeGrom, made that big decision in his big events last year in 21. He was ahead of the curve. If you have that sort of, hey, it's not going well, I cut, and you jumped off Grandal, you were able to replace him pretty easily because the catcher market was so robust. Where he could have burned you, though, was that you held thinking, hey, it's Yasmani Grandal, he'll get back on track, and you let Cal Raleigh go by, and you let Adley Rutschman go by, and you let Alejandro Kirk go by, which Alejandro Kirk was drafted in all 2 catcher leagues. I'm talking like 1 catcher situations here.
MJ Melendez. Like
MJ Melendez.
Pick him up off the wire.
Yes. Yeah. Like there were like Jonah Heim in your 2 catcher formats. He was available. Like there is a world where you watched 5, 6, 7, 8 quality catchers go by off the waiver wire because you were hanging on to Grandal thinking that he has to rebound, and he just never did, Justin. He was so bad. I can't be convinced that this wasn't injury fueled primarily, like the fact that his performance, even when he did play, obviously that's what kept him off the field, but it also ate up his numbers with a 68 WRC plus. Still had the quality plate skills, but just zero punch in his bat. Can the 34-year-old Grandal rebound, or is this the beginning of the end?
I mean, I think it's both. I think it is the beginning of the end for him, but I also think he can rebound. He's going to play. Like, they're going to play him. Yeah.
And they don't have anybody else.
Yeah.
Zebby Zavala is not the dude. I'm sorry.
No.
Like he's a fine C2, but he's not a C1.
Yeah, so I think he's going to play. I think he can volume his way into being useful. I think this is a fantastic price for a guy that's been a top 5 catcher in the league recently. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for this. I prefer to get an elite catcher, one of the top 5 or 6 catchers, and then grab him as my C2.
I'd love to make Grandal my C2. Yeah. By the way, minus 142 picks down to pick 250. So the robustness of the market, the catcher market, has also helped push this price down to where he's the 16th catcher off the board. In fact, the aforementioned Jonah Heim is going after him too. So, I'm in a situation where in DCs, I'd love to get a premier guy and then do like a Grandal Danjan pretty close together. And those are my top 3. And then my 4th guy is going to be like Austin Barnes, 8 gagillion picks later type of
Reese McGuire.
Just somebody that like can actually catch as my 4th, because I usually go for 4 in DCs. And that's kind of how I want to play it. Premium, 2 middles, 1 buying high on Danjan because he hit very well last year, and I think he's going to get traded. And then a buy low on Grandal, and then just a flyer late. That's kind of how I want to play. I love Grandal. I got burnt by this, but I'm buying back in because I think the price is cheap enough to buy back in.
I got Grandal as my C2 in my first DC of the year, and what I did was my C4 is Sebi Zavala.
There you go. There you go. So if he does flop again, you get that PT.
Zavala is the guy probably coming up to get the PT.
I went Danny Jansen and Heim in our draft. I'm really keen on Jansen to like Houston or something. Ideally Houston, but like Cleveland, I think is another contender that could use somebody. And I think that there's some good fits there. So, but yeah, Grandal on a buyback is nice. Let's stick with another GR for last name in Trent Grisham, who we hinted at earlier. He is obviously another big disappointment. He's somebody that I was so mad when he got taken by Dustin in our league, Dustin McComas, and turns out didn't have any reason to be mad. I picked him up after Dustin cut him. I picked him up off the wire. I was like, you know what? I'll take a shot on the talent here. It started off all right, but I probably held on too long to him because it got very bad again. And no matter how you slice it, outside of just looking at August, that's the only way you can look at it positively. He had 6 homers with an 838 OPS. Every other month was under 700 OPS, ranging as low as 345 in September, October, Justin. 17 homers, 7 steals, 152 games for Trent Grisham. Here's the crazy thing. All of that sucked completely, and I'm back in. I mean, I already told you he's on the team that you and I drafted. I just think the price has fallen enough. Am I a sucker for staying bought in on Trent Grisham?
Oh, yes. I mean, not completely, because the price is so good. Like, at worst, he's gonna deliver stolen bases. Like, I mean, and I mean, he did hit 17 home runs. Like, and
still had a 100-point OBP average split too, which is where you want to be.
And here's the thing, like, his defense is going to keep him on the field. Like, I think he plays center field. He was 99th percentile in outs above average, 78th percentile in the outfielder jump.
So you're telling me reasons why I'm not a sucker then.
You're probably not a sucker. The plate skills are atrocious. The
strikeout rate
swings and misses too much. He didn't make contact. Like, offensively, I don't know that he is very good, but he could volume his way into being usable because of that defense.
He's 26 too. Is there not a world where Trent Grisham
absolutely
figures some stuff out and rebounds? I mean, because he was dreadful against righties. We know that lefties can be trouble for these young lefties, although he actually has a reverse platoon throughout his career. But I mean, he's just evaporated against righties these last couple of years. He was 712 last year, 623 OPS this year. I feel like he's got to be better than that, but maybe not. Maybe not. That's 800 plate appearances against righties since 21, where he's putting up that's probably like a mid 700s OPS there if you add up the 2 seasons.
He definitely got unlucky. Like, his xBA was like 25 points higher than his actual BA.
227 BABIP against righties for Trent Grisham,
and that would had he gotten that that help, that would have brought his on base percentage up over 300. Because he is a 10% walk guy, walked an 11% rate, and so you got a guy who can get on base via the walk. You got a guy who can play really good defense on a team that I think is going to value that defense, especially if we see someone like Tatis go into the outfield. They're going to want a guy like Grisham to help him cover as he kind of learns how to really play that position full time. I mean, I think there are reasons, especially at the reduced price. Now, if the price starts going back up, then I'm going to be out. But I think at the price, he's a fine pick. Like, what do you want? You want guys who are going to play. I think Grisham's going to play.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think the volume's going to be there. He's going to get an opportunity to rebound. We'll see if the skills are there for Grisham. I'm willing to take another shot this year. And if it's gone this year, in 23, okay, cool, I move on. But at age 26, I think there's enough upside to where he could be a big hit. I don't even need him necessarily to be. I'll take a solid return, but I think the upside is actually quite rich too. I can't quite give him up. We're not that far removed from some quality work. Even 2021 was at least a 103 WRC plus, and of course he was good in the 2020 60 gamer, which that's only a 2-month run though, so that's why we can't put too much stock into that.
And his power, we saw these 17 home runs. Like, I think they're fairly legitimate. 15 of those 17 home runs fell into the mostly gone section of kind of the home run tracker over on Baseball Savant. So, like, it wasn't like he got lucky fluke wise. And while we saw a lot of other people lose home runs because of mediocre power, I think Trent Grisham has legit power. To at least hit 20 bombs. And we know he's got the potential to steal 20 bases if he can get on base enough. So, I think he is, maybe he gets lucky. Maybe he just improves those contact skills because, like you said, he's only 26. And, like, he could be a sneaky 2020 guy.
Yeah, I think so as well with Trent Grisham. So I'm definitely taking a look at him. Those are our big ADP movers on the drop side. There, you got Schwindel, Villar, Grossman, Cruz, Toro, as far as the biggest drops overall of non-injury closers or retirements. And then among the top 300 picks, Whit Merrifield, Jared Walsh, Jose Berrios, and Yasmani Grandal and Trent Grisham, all still in that top 300. They fell from much higher purchase than that. And there's some bargains there. There's some bargains to get. There's some other guys that maybe you just let the price keep dropping and you pass on that. Justin, it's rainy and gloomy here, so it's officially no longer baseball season, right? We kind of had our final end of season there when we go to the Arizona Fall League. That's usually the bow on the season for me. That means it's time to look forward. You said you're working on your rankings this weekend. What else are you doing in this early part of the off season to kind of get yourself ready? Taking a breather? You going in on something else? Like, what do you do in this November time to kind of make sure that you're still sharpening your game for the following season?
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know if this was like a softball setup or not, but posted an article to Fangraphs this morning called "Your Off-Season Checklist," and it's literally these are exactly the things I do in order to get ready for another season. So, and it's kind of step-by-step breakdown of like what I think everybody should be doing. So you can definitely go check that out over on Fangraphs. Give us a click, read it, tell me what you think. But I mean, mostly it's I want to absorb as much information as possible. But before I do that, I want to make sure I go through my previous teams, see what I fucked up. And I did a whole series of articles outlining exactly what I messed up, where I can improve, what my fallacies in terms of strategies were. And then I want to set my own baseline. So if you do ranks, if you do projections, do those as early as possible before you get influenced by other people. That gives you an idea of where you stand, and then you can use other people's information through podcasts and articles to kind of rein you in one way or another. Like, did I miss something? Am I not understanding something on certain players? Things like that. And then I go through I have a whole section in that article about the best ways to kind of filter information, because there's a lot of great information out there. There's a lot of bad information out there. And the people who are really good at fantasy are able to filter that information properly.
Noise, got to filter out the noise. It's the signal from the noise, as they say. That's a great article there. And listen, I'm here to set you up.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Are you and Justin or Jason gonna be talking this weekend? I know we obviously had a pod last weekend and it went very well and we had a blast. Are you guys gonna be talking this weekend at all?
I don't know yet. I'll send him a message. I'd like to start recording regularly again with him. It is my birthday coming up here in a little under a week's time. So, may end up waiting till after Thanksgiving to do that. But we'll be getting rolling here again, and I'll be bringing on guests too. So if you have people in the industry that you've heard on other podcasts or have their own podcasts and you want to hear them on this podcast, please let us know. Talk to a few people in Arizona, like James Anderson and Kevin Hastings and the Triple Play guys about coming on the pod. So you and I'll organize maybe some midweek guest episodes with some of those
fantastic.
people. And then I'll have ones with Jason on the weekend as well.
All right. Sounds great. Well, have a wonderful weekend. I'll talk to you on Tuesday.
Take it easy.